So today I want to tell you a chilling story, a true account that comes to us from Mizoram. It's a story about a place where the line between our world and, well, whatever comes next is incredibly thin. And it's a place where local warnings aren't just folklore, they're about survival.
And that question right there, that's really what this whole thing is about. What happens when our modern, skeptical world crashes headfirst into a reality it just isn't ready for?
All right, so our story kicks off back in 2013. We're following a guy named Raghav Mishra. He's from Uttar Pradesh, works for an NGO, and he's on what should be a totally normal assignment in Mizoram. Just some field work and community organizing.
You've got to picture this place. Raghav's working with the Chakma people, a community that lives a very simple, disciplined life, deeply connected to the nature around them. His guide is a local man, Suman. Everything seems peaceful, orderly, completely normal.
And for Raghav, you have to understand, this wasn't some big adventure. It was just a job. New place, sure, new people, but the routine was the same. He had absolutely no reason to be afraid or suspicious of anything.
But it's never that simple, is it? Pretty soon, this perfect routine started to feel a little off, because simmering just beneath the surface of this calm little community were unspoken rules. Rules that nobody ever talked about, but everybody followed.
So, the first weird thing he picks up on is the timing. Every single day, like clockwork, right as the sun starts to dip below the horizon, everyone just stops. They stop working, they pack up, and they head home. No bell, no announcement, just this silent collective understanding that when the sun goes down, you go inside.
And then there was the forest. There was this one particular patch of woods nearby, and any time Raghav even casually asked about it, the conversation would just hit a wall. Suman, or anyone else, would get this look on their face and just say something like, "That side is not for work," and immediately change the subject. It was a firm, invisible line.
Okay, so things are already a little weird. But then, one evening, it gets really strange. Raghav's working, and he glances over at this old bamboo hut he's passed a dozen times. A hut he knows for a fact is abandoned. Only this time, he sees a little boy inside, maybe 5 or 6 years old, just staring right back at him.
So Raghav, not thinking much of it, starts to get up to go check on the kid. But before he can even take a couple of steps, Suman literally grabs him, yanks him back. And the look on his face, it wasn't just cautious, it was sheer terror, with a little bit of anger mixed in. No explanation, just a clear message: stay away.
So let's just recap, right? The entire village vanishes at sunset. There's a whole section of forest that's completely off limits, and now there's a mysterious little boy in an empty hut that makes his guide totally freak out. The question is just hanging there. What on earth is everyone here so afraid of?
Well, he was about to find out, and not in a good way. This next part is where everything comes to a head, on a drive that would completely change how Raghav saw the world.
So, one day, Raghav gets held up in the city with paperwork. By the time he's finally driving back to the village, it is pitch black. And the only road home, oh yeah, it cuts right through that very same dense, forbidden forest. He's alone in his little work-issued Maruti 800.
And then, it starts. In the middle of the forest, his car engine just cuts out. Dead silence. A moment later, he hears it. A child crying, somewhere deep in the trees. He gets out to check the engine, and that's when he sees them on the car door. Small, muddy handprints. He blinks, looks away for just a second, and when he looks back, they're gone.
He's completely panicked now, fumbling with the keys, trying to get the car to start. Finally, it roars to life. He floors it, just wanting to get out of there. And that's when he makes the mistake. He glances up at his rearview mirror, and he sees him. The same little boy from the hut, sitting silently in his back seat.
I mean, what do you even do in that situation? His reaction was just pure instinctual terror. He screamed, wrenched the steering wheel, and slammed on the brakes. The sound of his tires screeching just ripped through the silence of that forest. When the sound finally died down, Raghav was alone in the car again. But he wasn't going to be alone for long. Help was coming, and with it came the answers he never, ever wanted to know.
Out of the darkness, Suman and a whole group of villagers appear. They weren't just passing by, they were already out looking for him. They knew that road was dangerous after dark. The sound of his tires was just the final signal they needed to pinpoint where he was.
So, the next morning, a completely shaken Raghav finally gets the full story from Suman. It turns out the boy was real. He'd lived in the village. After his mother passed away, the villagers, trying to be kind, told him she had just gone away. Desperate to find her, he climbed a tall tree to look for her, but he slipped and fell, and his spirit, still searching, never left.
But why was he still there? And why was he so active? Well, according to a local tantric, the boy's grief was so profound, his desperation so strong, that it had twisted his spirit into something negative and powerful. His one final wish, to see his mother again, was impossible to grant, so he was stuck. The only defense the villagers had was to just ignore him, to give him no fear, no attention, nothing.
And that was it for Raghav. He packed his bags that day. He left Mizoram with a story he would carry with him for the rest of his life and a lesson that was burned into his memory.
The change in his perspective was just absolute. He went into that village with the curious mindset of an outsider, always asking, well, why can't I go there? He left with a totally different attitude. Please, just tell me where not to go.
Raghav still does his job today. He travels to remote places. But now he gets it. He learned, in the most terrifying way you can imagine, that some warnings are not up for debate. Some boundaries are just not meant to be crossed.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about, right? When we hear these local stories, these unspoken rules, are they just interesting folklore? Or are they a map to boundaries that our modern world has forgotten how to see? Boundaries that we were never, ever supposed to test?